itself. Now, these stones, or this type anchor stone, is a very familiar object to the students of early navigation. They were used by many of the early civilizations, the Phoenicians in particular, and the shores of the Mediterranean and the floor of the Mediterranean is strewn with these stones. The difference that becomes obvious immediately is the difference in size.
These giant pierced stones are similar to ancient anchor stones used in the Mediterranean for centuries and millennia. These pierced stones are like the large Bronze Age stone anchors from the Mediterranean. Tall, broad when viewed from the side, thin when viewed edgewise or end-on, tapered towards the top, and have rope holes at their upper ends. On all of these counts, therefore, they qualify quite readily as fitting the picture of stone anchors as Ron originally identified them. Only in size or scale do these stones differ significantly from their considerably smaller Mediterranean counterparts. If the size of the stone anchors implies the size of the boat or ship on which they were used, how much more should it be true for these stone anchors weighing several tons to be, by this standard, ark-size stone anchors? As electrifying as these discoveries are for Ron, they're not the only reason for him to believe that this area is the possible landing place of the Ark. Villagers tell Ron that the village in which the standing anchor stone rests is known as the Village of Eight. Also, this majestic valley, located a few miles from the village, is known as the Valley or Region of the Eight. None of the inhabitants of this region know how these names came to be. They've been passed down from generation to generation. Again, he clearly finds reference to the 8 survivors of the flood. Here is another strong indication to Ron that someone from antiquity has left record of the landing place and survival of Noah and his family.
Now, the formation that we have, as it's been surveyed both from aerial photographs and on the ground, it's been measured both ways, is 150 meters long, or almost 500 feet. If you take that long Egyptian cubit, assuming Moses is the author of the account, or the transmitter of the account, and apply that standard of measurement, it is interesting that this formation, either in the photographs or on the ground, has measured to essentially what would be 300 cubits long. Now, that's a remarkable correspondence. It's not 500 cubits, it's not 150 cubits, it just happens to be 300 cubits long. And the biblical story just happens to record the length of the ark as 300 cubits long.
On one occasion, Dr. Shea had made a trip to eastern Turkey and had the opportunity to examine some of Ron's discoveries, particularly the massive anchor stones.
I've seen 3 of those stones in the field. One is in a village and 2 are out in the fields by the village. The first point that one can make in comparing with anchor stones, and we have many, many anchor stones to compare with. Anchor stones were the common way to anchor ships until iron came in about 1200 BC. Anchor stones are tall in one dimension. They are thin in another direction, and they have a hole at the top. Now, the other aspect of these stones is their iconography. Somebody has carved some signs into them, as you can see from this one right here. The large cross in the center would be Noah. The medium-sized cross to the right and below would represent Noah's wife. 3 of the crosses up one side, above the arm of the cross, the major cross, would represent Noah's sons. The other 3 crosses up the other side would represent the wives of Noah's sons. There's exactly 8 crosses. There are 8 people in the flood story, and these are engraved upon stones that look very much like anchor type of stones. These are Christian crosses, but they indicate that the people who put those crosses on these stones saw some type of connection between these particular stones and the idea of Noah and the ark and the 8 people that were in the ark according to the biblical record. Now these stones are very unusual and irregular in that they are not near any normal natural body of water. It seems evident to me that somebody either wanted to depict something like an anchor stone or actually used an anchor stone in this area. And yet the nearest bodies of water are 75 miles to the southwest and 100 miles to the north. No normal, natural, reasonable explanation for why anchor stones would be used in this particular area.
They also found a recently constructed stone structure which had pieces of an ancient broken stele incorporated in it. Being careful not to draw the attention of the locals to these broken pieces of stone, they photographed the pictures inscribed on these stones. Pieced together, these broken pieces depicted a boat-shaped object very similar to the 1950s aerial photograph. And within this boat shape were 8 faces. The very unique mountain ridge above the boat-shaped object was also depicted, with ravens in flight, and next to the ridge was depicted a volcanic-looking mountain, a mountain that had since subsided. When Ron stood on the top of the ridge and looked south where this mountain was represented as being, he saw that there was a mountain in that location, but that it was no longer visible from the viewpoint of the artist of the stele. This was, Ron was sure, the volcano that had erupted many, many years ago and covered the boat with lava. Since the broken pieces of the stele were found near the location of the section he believed was the bottom of the hull embedded in the earth, he believed that this stele had once marked the original location of the ark.
Ron Wyatt and Dave Fassel believe they have found the ark on a slope of what the local people call Doomsday Mountain, some 15 miles south of Mount Ararat. Their ark fever is fueled by expeditions on foot, deep into the surrounding valleys. Here, following a local Kurdish villager who drew maps on his palms, Wyatt and Fassel have made what they consider exciting and important discoveries. Apparently old Armenian tombstones that commemorate the survival of Noah and his family.
Same kind of strange stones. When the early Christians found these things, they carved 8 crosses on it for the 8 survivors. This whole valley was known as the region of 8.
Ron, what's the significance of the placement of the crosses in these stones?
All right, Tom, this is an iconographic representation here of a man, the head of the household, his wife, his 3 sons, and his 3 daughters or daughters-in-law. And as you can see here, the 8 crosses, the ones to his left are the lady folks in the family. The ones to his right are the men folks in the family.
Do these fit the story of Noah?
They do.
To Wyatt and Fassel, these stones appear to be in direct alignment to the boat-shaped site on Doomsday Mountain. The boat-shaped site was first found and photographed by a Turkish army captain back in 1959. It was quickly explored and dismissed as a freak of nature. But Wyatt, an amateur archaeologist, rekindled interest in it a few years ago.